Mill Pond Cave, April 2019. A group of 5 British cave divers arrived in Jackson County, Tennessee, to carry out a technical dive in the flooded Mill Pond Cave. Although Mill Pond Cave is only 17 meters deep and 133 meters long, the main challenge lies in its narrow passages and near zero visibility. The diver's task was to repair a damaged guideline, an essential tool for navigation in such conditions. One by one, the divers went in, completed their tasks, and resurfaced. But one of them, Josh Brachley, didn't come back. At first, his teammates thought he was just delayed, but as the hours passed, it became clear something had gone wrong. At 1:15 a.m., the group sent out a distress signal. On his way back, Josh Brachley realized that the guideline had snapped again. That left him with 2 possible paths, and he chose the one that led to a dead end. By the time Josh understood his mistake, his oxygen tank was almost empty. He managed to find a small air pocket which allowed him to breathe freely. The temperature in the cave kept dropping, and at the same time, Josh's condition was getting worse and worse. A rescue team arrived at the site, and among them was Ed Sorensen, one of the most experienced cave divers in the US. The problem was that all the guideline ropes inside the cave had snapped. Visibility was zero. Every meter had to be navigated by touch. 28 hours after the disappearance, Ed Sorensen found Josh. Despite severe exhaustion and hypothermia, Josh was calm, and the first thing he asked for was pizza. After that, he was safely evacuated. He didn't need any medical assistance. Riesending Cave, June 2014. A 52-year-old German speleologist, Johann Westhauser, together with 2 colleagues, went on an expedition to the Riesending Cave, located in Bavaria on the border with Austria. This cave is the deepest and longest in Germany, with a depth of over 1,149 meters and a length of more than 19 kilometers. In addition, it has many hard-to-navigate and narrow sections, making its exploration even more difficult. On June 7th, the group began their descent into the cave. At first, everything was going according to plan, and the speleologists were progressing successfully. The next day, around 1:30 a.m., at a depth of approximately 1,000 meters, in a section with the rather simple name Long Strait, a small cave-in occurred, during which several large rocks fell directly on Johann Westhauser's head. His protective helmet cracked and blood started flowing from his head. One of his colleagues stayed with him, while the other began the ascent to the surface, which took about 10 hours, to call for help. During this time, Johann Westhauser's condition worsened. He began experiencing severe vomiting, dizziness, and hallucinations. On the evening of June 8th, a rescue operation began. More than 700 specialists from Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Italy, and Croatia took part. The rescuers faced numerous challenges, narrow passages, and vertical shafts. On June 11th, a doctor reached the injured speleologist and diagnosed him with a traumatic brain injury. A decision was made to transport him to the surface. Special stretchers were used for this. The most difficult part was passing through the narrow sections, which forced the rescuers to spend a lot of time manually widening the passages, since even the weakest explosives would be extremely dangerous in this cave. And finally, on June 19th at 11:44 a.m., Westhauser was successfully evacuated from the cave and transported to a clinic in Bueno. The operation became one of the largest in Germany's history, lasted 11 days, and cost nearly 1 million euros. Afterward, the entrance to the cave was sealed, and access is now only possible with special permission. Bueno Fonteno Cave, December 2024. A 32-year-old caver, Ottavia Piana, along with a group of 8 researchers, entered the Bueno Fonteno Cave, located in the Italian province of Bergamo. Their goal was to map an unexplored section. The cave is known for its complex system of narrow passages, limited navigation, and a high level of difficulty in progression. On December 14th, the group was at a depth of about 585 meters and approximately 4 kilometers from the entrance. While moving through the cave, Ottavia slipped and fell from a height of roughly 5 meters. As a result, she sustained multiple injuries, fractures to her facial bones, ribs, knee joint, and, based on preliminary reports, possible spinal damage, leaving her nearly unable to move. Gradually, the temperature in the cave began to drop, and due to her injuries, Ottavia started feeling unwell and was close to losing consciousness. The remaining cavers tried to lift Ottavia out of the pit on their own, but all their attempts failed. After that, they contacted coordinators above ground, who in turn called in rescuers. At 2:29 a.m. on December 15th, a large-scale rescue operation was launched. Around 160 people participated, including cavers, medics, and rescuers from various regions of Italy. When rescuers reached Ottavia, her condition was dire, but she was still conscious. They immediately began the evacuation operation and, on the first attempt, successfully lifted her out of the pit. However, they still had to cover nearly 4 kilometers to reach the cave entrance. Due to the narrow and difficult passages, transporting Piana was extremely challenging. Some passages had to be widened using low-powered explosive devices. Temporary stops were made to assess her medical condition. Despite her serious injuries, Ottavia remained conscious and even encouraged the rescue team. The operation lasted almost 75 hours. Early in the morning on December 18th, Ottavia Piana was successfully brought to the surface and was immediately airlifted to a hospital in the city of Bergamo. Doctors assessed her condition as stable. Krizna Jama Cave, January 2024. A group of 5 people, including 2 experienced guides, decided to explore the Krizna Jama Cave. One of the cave's unique features is its large number of underground lakes, which can only be navigated by boat. Before entering the cave, the speleologists noticed that the weather was unstable, but the experienced guides were confident that everything would be fine. In addition to the 2 guides who entered the cave, there was one more who stayed outside just in case. After passing through a small section of the cave, the speleologists boarded a boat and continued their journey through the underground lakes. However, the weather began to worsen and more water started entering the cave. At this point, the speleologists noticed that the water level had risen slightly but didn't think much of it. About 20 minutes later, they reached a depth of 150 meters and the water level began to rise steadily. Upon looking around, the guides realized that all the entrances were blocked by water, and panic set in as the water level continued to rise and the way back was no longer an option. The speleologists left the boat and climbed onto a small elevation. One of the guides noticed that the speleologists hadn't returned at the scheduled time and decided to go looking for them. However, the high water level prevented him from going too far, so he returned to the cave entrance and called for rescuers. Due to the heavy rain, all the entrances to the cave became impassable, but 2 divers managed to reach the group and provided them with food, water, and blankets. However, the water level prevented them from bringing the entire group back. The temperature inside the cave began to drop, and despite the blankets, one of the speleologists started to feel unwell. Overnight, the water level slightly decreased and the rescue operation resumed. Many were optimistic, but the weather had its say and the water level in the cave rose again. This completely blocked all possible rescue routes, leaving the speleologists trapped for another day. The next day, the weather improved, which helped the water level decrease to a level that allowed the rescuers to safely move the speleologists to the cave entrance. Within 3 hours, the rescuers reached the trapped group, and after several more hours of work, all 5 were successfully evacuated.